This one comes from Thomas. He says, I live in Berkeley, and everyone I speak to is for universal health care, Social Security, and many other socialized programs. They seem to want entitlements, so what is an effective way to communicate and prove to them that actually privatizing organizations and taking care of themselves is in their best interest versus paying for everyone?
Uh, so you live out in Berkeley, and the Berkeleyans are all about the handouts. And you're saying, how do I convince somebody who is concerned about who wants handouts that he shouldn't want handouts? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
I always there's a subtle tactic that I use that really puts the onus on the other person and I guess kind of showcases their flaws without actually saying you're a cheap uh, sob. So if somebody says, "Well, I think that the government needs to come in and help these people," or I just think we need a Social Security and Medicaid and all this stuff, and I just say, you know what, I don't believe in that because I don't think anybody owes me anything. I don't think I have the right to what somebody else has earned. I think that it's my responsibility. And then they naturally come, well, what would you do about it? What would you do? Well, here's the crazy thing is what did we do before Medicaid? Before Medicaid, we had charity. There was a sense that you were responsible. This goes back to personal responsibility. This is stuff that we should teach to our kids that just isn't getting taught anymore. There's the assumption that you shouldn't have to be responsible for these things, for your life, for your finances, for your health.
Yeah, there's this idea that you can make whatever decision you want, but not have to suffer any negative
That's right.
consequences.
Yeah. So if I want to double fist Big Macs for 15 years
Hmm.
and drop out of high school, then when I get diabetes at 25 and I've got arthritis and a cancer growing in my body and I can't afford my health care costs, well, then somebody else should bear the responsibility for my decisions. Or let's say I just didn't plan for my retirement, that I just thought, oh, well, I'll probably die young anyway, and I'm going to spend it now while it's good, and I'll worry about the future in the future. And all of a sudden, the future shows up and you have nothing. How is it someone else's responsibility to provide for your life? Now, you can go and beg, you can go and ask for charity, and there are plenty of organizations out there that will be more than willing to help you to one degree or another, that will help you get back on your feet, that will help you take care of yourself. But it's always going to require you to take personal responsibility and initiative for your own life. The only time that that is absent is when the government gets involved. Because those who are in power in government just want to control your life. And the easiest way to control your life is to take all of your money away and redistribute it back to you in the form of some sort of subsidy.
As long as you do exactly what we tell
All right,
you.
as long as you fill out the forms, as long as you stand in the right lines, as long as you say the right things and jump through the right hoops, then you can get your check. And I think that what is wrong with America and what's wrong with places like Berkeley is that all of these people think that they're being generous. They think that they're being humanitarian by spending someone else's money. This is one of a big problem with progressives is that they think because they're in favor of someone else providing for these poor people that somehow they've done a good thing for the poor people. They haven't done anything. It's only when you reach into your own wallet, pull out your own money, and hand it to somebody on the street and say, "Here you go," or "Hey, how about I grab you some lunch?" or "I'm going to donate to this charity because I love the work that they do." That's charitable. Charity is not theft. And when these people advocate, what they really want is they want the good feeling of being charitable without actually being charitable. Every single one of them will claim that they would love to they just wish the taxes would go up on the rich, but they're never the rich one. If they make $250,000 a year, well, it ought to be on people at $500,000 a year. And if they make half a million, it ought to be on people over a million. And then when you get up to the numbers that some of these celebrities run in terms of the $20 million movies that they make, and they're making more money in 6 months than most people make in a lifetime, or two lifetimes, or three lifetimes, and they're complaining about how the rich don't pay their fair share. all you got to do is say, well, how much more are you giving away? Like, you get what you're supposed to pay in taxes, and of course, you don't take any deductions. And then you pay a little extra on top of that just so that you feel like you're doing your part, right? Well, no. Well, why not? How much money do you give away to charity every year? Bernie Sanders, what was it? 3%, 4% of his income. The man makes $200,000 a year, gives away 4%, takes every tax deduction he possibly can. These people are hypocrites is what they are. And the way I mean, I all you can do, because if you come out and say, "Well, you're a hypocrite," then you're just going to shut them down. But if you try and have a logical conversation with them and say, "Yeah, I don't believe in that because I don't think you owe me anything." It works even better if they're better off than you are. If you're better off than them, then it becomes more difficult. But if they're better off than you are, then you say, "Well, I just don't think you owe me anything." I think it's my responsibility to make sure that I provide for myself and for my family. And if I do need help, if something happens, then I got to take my hat off and I got to go down to the corner or to my friends or relatives, and I got to hold my hat out and I got to say, can I please have some money so that I can provide for my family because I haven't been able to do it myself. Now you can imagine the shame and just the feeling that you get by having to do that. But most people are more than willing to send someone else to your neighbor's house to take your money than they are to show up themselves, hat in hand, and say, "Hey, I need some help. Can you help me?" Because they don't like the way that feels. But when you explain it to them like that, and you say, "Hey, there may come a time in my life when I need someone else's charity." I remember when I was growing. This was one of the big things for me when I was growing up. And Charles, can you just go turn on the air conditioning if you would? Um, I left my sweatshirt on today, and it's hot in this studio. Um, when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, and we were constantly the benefit of someone's charity. And I remember how that made me feel. It didn't make me feel good, and I don't want to. I don't want my parents to feel bad about, because they did a fine job raising us, and it was a good house, but there was constantly a shortage of money. And after my dad and mom got divorced, there was always a shortage of money because my mom was working 70 hours a week just to keep us off welfare. And I remember people coming and being charitable, just leaving money in our mailbox. People who were part of our church to kind of help my mom get over, or maybe help for a little extra for Christmas, whatever it was. And while there wasn't, it wasn't like I had pride and I didn't want to take the money, but even when I was that young, I realized when I got older, I wanted to be the one who got to put the money in the mailbox. That makes sense?
Hmm.
That I wanted to be the one who was helping those who needed it, that I didn't want to ever be on the other side of that. And there may come a time in my life when that's who I have to be, that I have to be the one who's hoping and praying and begging for the charity of others. But I recognize that it is my responsibility, that if that day comes, that it is a failure on my part to provide for my family and to do the things that I am obligated as a man and as a human being to do, to provide for myself and for those who are my dependents. And when you start talking in those terms and you start talking about it not being okay to steal someone else's money, then all their whole charity argument just goes out the window. They have nothing. So that's the
How do
way I
you
would.
feel about child welfare, and how do you go about that from a libertarian perspective?
Well, I don't believe in welfare in the sense, because welfare is the transfer of wealth from one person to another. I believe in charity. And so I think that everybody has kind of their little thing. My thing has always been single moms. I don't know what it is, but there is a uh, my parents got divorced when I was 16. I watched my mom really struggle for years and years and years to raise us and to keep us, like I said, to keep us off welfare. And I mean, she about put herself in an early grave trying to make sure that we had a roof over our heads and food in our belly all the way through school. And so maybe it's that. maybe it's just the fact that that's just kind of my deal. But I have a thing for single moms, and so I'll give you an example that there was a school where single moms were going back to school trying to get into these. It wasn't like a degree program; it was kind of like a technical school where you learn to be a bookkeeper or something like that, right? A technician in a hospital. And a lot of these single moms were having to drop out because they didn't have money for diapers. Like they couldn't afford to keep their kids in diapers. And so they were doing a diaper drive. And so I spent a fair amount of money buying diapers for all these women. And that's the type of stuff that if I tend to be attracted to. It doesn't mean I don't give to other things because my wife and I give to our church and we give to special interest stuff. We give to our school, which is a private school, above and beyond what the donations are, and we do a lot above and beyond, what is required under our faith. And I tend to gravitate towards that kind of stuff. My wife gravitates towards other things. And I think in a society where it is understood and expected that you, the individual, will open up your wallet and give, that some people will gravitate towards children who are in need of foster care. There will be foster parents who will take them on not for a paycheck, but because that's what they want to do. And that's their form of charity. And there will be people who donate to charities who care for these kids and who do pay to have them placed in homes. I don't think there has to be a government solution when it comes to charity because the government can't be charitable. It can only steal. And every dollar that it steals, it keeps a little bit for itself, and then a little bit trickles down to who it's supposed to go to. And there's no doubt that private entities can run things far more efficiently and far better and move quicker than the government can. And so, in my opinion, when it comes to foster care, I would try and remove the government as much as possible from the equation by returning people's money that the government is taking from them to their own pockets and then allowing them to give as they see fit. And the nice thing is, the more you have, the more you have to give. Like, that's one of the things that what I've talked a little bit about my own life without getting too personal with you guys, but one of the things that's very important to me um, is that I have money to give to other people. And anytime that I start to feel the pinch, and I don't feel like I have the money to give to this thing or to that thing, it infuriates me, frankly, because more than the houses and the cars and the things like that that I have, my ability to provide charity to others is what I feel is a personal responsibility of mine. And so I get very frustrated when things get tight, when the company's not doing as well as I want it to, or when we've had a situation that's prevented us from being able to donate the way I'd like. And I want to instill that in my children. And I think if more of us did that and simply looked away from the government and said, it's not the government's responsibility to do that, it's our responsibility to do it, then we would have a lot more generosity. And if the government would simply return to us what they've stolen, we'd have the money to be able to give in much greater quantities than we even do now. And we're a very generous country, by the way. Something like what is it, $300 billion a year or something
Hmm.
in personal charitable donations. I mean, we are one of the most generous nations on earth, if not the.